All right, guys. I am not feeling well, so I'm gonna do just a video recording for you right now. This is for honors. We're gonna quickly just review 7.1, 7.2, and then jump into 7.3. Don't mind Miss Sarge's attire. I'm just coming in here the night before and getting this recorded for you. So take a look right now at 7.1, relations and functions. We just recently started talking about relations and functions. So we're talking about ordered pairs, showing us some inputs and outputs. We learned right here, you should have this in your notes, that a relation pairs inputs and outputs. Okay, it doesn't matter how many there are, it's just a set of inputs and outputs. But a function is a specific kind of relation that pairs each input with exactly one output. So you've got to remember this stuff because now we're moving on to kind of a different idea within these functions. You learned that the domain is the set of all inputs, the range is the set of all outputs. We kind of started looking at these mapping diagrams and saying, is this a function? What's going on in the relation? Things like that. So this one asked you to list the ordered pairs. You have to remember that input is the same thing as the x and output is the same thing as the y, and then just pair them together, and that's what we did. So we had 1, 3, 2, 6, 3, 9, and 4, 12 as our ordered pairs, okay? Same thing for all of these. Then what we did was we started looking at them and deciding if they're a function. You had to remember that a function is one input to one output, okay? So we're looking here, deciding, remember this is x is our input, y is our output. So we decided, is there anything that's being repeated? And if there is, it's not a function. We kind of joked that you don't want to date your x again, so we don't want to see that same x value. So here we've got -9 paired with 0, -2 paired with 5, 5 paired with 10, and 12 paired with 10. This is okay because it's one input to one output, 1 to 1, 1 to 1, 1 to 1. So we said, yes, this is a function. Okay, then you talk about your domain and range. If you remember, domain is the same thing as the x values, range, same thing as the y values, so then we listed them. -9, -2, 5, 12. Okay, that's the domain, the x's. The range are the y's. Okay, so our y values we have here are 0, 5, and 10. Okay, one that wouldn't be a function was this second one. Remember, a function is one input to one output. So if you start looking at these, -2 to 4, that's 1 to 1. -1 to 3, that's 1 to 1. But right here, we've got 0 going to 5 and to 6, okay? That's technically a repeated x value. That 0 is used twice, so it's not a function, okay? The input side is the domain, the output side is the range, okay? After we did this, we went into looking at what it looks like on a graph and in a table, okay? So again, in 7.2, we reviewed all of those terms because you have to be able to interchange all of those words, knowing that inputs are the same thing as x values, outputs are the same thing as y values, or domain is the same thing as inputs and x, and range is the same thing as outputs and y. You have to know those things, okay? So we started looking at these tables and graphs, and this is where we really started to see identifying a function with a repeated x value. So we really just look at this list and we say, is there anything here that's repeated? If there is, it's not a function. Well, I don't see anything here that's repeated, so yes, this one's a function, okay? Then it asks you domain and range. You have to remember domain is x, range is y, okay? -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. Then the range is the y, so -8, -4, 0, 4, 8, okay? Then you look at this second example right here, okay? We're looking for a repeated x value. We don't want a repeated x, okay? We don't want to date that same person again. We don't want that same x, right? So right here, I have a repeated x value, which means no, this is not a function. I have one input with multiple outputs. That's not allowed, okay? Domain and range, again, this side is the domain, this side is the range, okay? One of the things that might have been a little bit of a struggle is this part right here, where we're taking these words, okay, and turning it into an equation. But that's really what we're working towards in this next lesson that I'm going to get to in just a second, okay? Because we need to understand that a function, okay, is the same thing as an equation, okay? And our specific equation is in the form of y equals mx plus b, okay? So we're really just taking all of these words and changing it into that format. So we learned that output is the same thing as y. Is always means equals. Then we have to take all of these other words and figure out what they mean. If I'm doing 5 less than something, I should know that that means I'm taking 5 away. So this means subtract 5, but it's subtracting 5 from the input, which is x. And then I had to rearrange it to make sure it's actually doing that, taking 5 away from x. So y equals x minus 5. This is a function, which is also an equation, okay? That's what we're gonna start doing today, is looking at these functions and writing their equations or kind of graphing them, okay? That's what we're getting into. So go ahead and jump into 7.3. 7.3, linear functions, okay? Linear functions, okay? We learned before that an equation, okay, is a function. So this is really the same as linear equations. Give me a second to get out of your way. Okay, linear equations, linear functions, same thing. Okay, we learned linear equations already. That's y equals mx plus b. So a linear function or equation can be written in the form y equals mx plus b, which you already know. M is the slope and b is the y-intercept, because we did this 2 chapters ago. So all we're doing is writing the linear function, aka equation, for this line. You've already done this stuff, okay? This should be review. So 2 things that I need to write a linear function are the m and the b. Hopefully you remember how to do this, okay? M, it just told you, represents the slope. I have a line on a graph already, so I just need to find the slope between 2 points. Doesn't matter which 2 points you choose, okay? I'm just gonna choose these 2 right here. Yours might, the lines might look a little weird on your graph, I'm not sure, but just make sure that you're counting correctly. So my rise is 1, 2, 3, and my run is 1, 2. So that slope is 3 over 2. Next thing I need is b, which is the y-intercept, okay? So my y-intercept, where my line crosses the y-axis, is right here, that's -3. So my b is -3. Now I just have to write that function, aka the equation, by plugging those 2 things in. So m goes here, y equals 3 over 2, x, and then my y-intercept is -3, so -3. Okay, we've done this already. It's just giving it a new name, it's calling it a function. Okay, and I told you that once you get into Algebra 1, it starts asking you what's the function, or solve the function for x. Okay, this is our function, aka our equation. All right, so we're gonna do it again. Right here in this graph. So you need 2 things still. You need the m, and you need the b, or the slope and the y-intercept, okay? Pick any 2 points, doesn't matter which. Okay, I'm gonna go down here just to show you that these can still be the same. Starting with the point on the left, first movement is always up or down. In this case, I can only go down 1, that's a -1, and right 2. My slope is -1/2. Okay, it still works right here. Down 1, right 2, down 1, right 2. So no matter what points you choose, it works, okay? Now I need my y-intercept. So where my line is crossing the y-axis, which is right here, that's -1. Okay, so I write the equation. Y equals m, which is -1/2, x, and then y-intercept -1. Okay, hopefully this makes sense. Hopefully this is review, okay? But the next part is the tricky part, where they don't give us a graph and we still have to write an equation from it, okay? At this point, if you have any questions, make sure to just jot them down somewhere on the side of your paper, and then you'll be able to ask questions or email me at some point, okay? All right, so now we're gonna use a table to write a linear function or equation that relates x to y, okay? That really just means what's the connection, what's the relationship. You've already kind of been talking about that, okay? So our function is an equation, y equals mx plus b. When we don't have a graph, we have to use our handy dandy formula to find the slope, okay? And then we have to look in our tables and see, is there a y-intercept, okay? And we'll talk about that in a second. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is use my formula for both of these to find the slope. I'm gonna pick any 2 points, doesn't really matter which two I choose, okay? But I'm just gonna go ahead and use the first 2 points right here, these two. So this first x is going to be x1. I hope you can see that. Then this is y1, x2, and y2. So go ahead and write that down. I'm gonna just check and make sure you can see that. I don't think that blue is a very good color. Okay, x1, y1, x2, y2. Let me write it right here. x1, y1, x2, y2. And all I do is plug it in to find the slope, okay? So y2 comes first, y2 minus y1, that's 7. m equals 7 minus y1, which is 9, over x2, negative 2, minus x1, which is a negative 3. Notice that double negative right there. Okay, and then we solve. 7 minus 9, negative 2. Then I've got negative 2 minus negative 3. Remember that minus negative becomes a big giant plus sign? So it's negative 2 plus 3, which hopefully you're going to say is 1. So now we have our slope, okay? But then I need to look for my y-intercept, okay? And hopefully you know where to find it in the table, but if you don't, I want you to think about these two y-intercepts that we had up here. This one is the point 0, negative 3. And this one is the point 0, negative 1. Okay, what do you notice that those 2 points have in common? An x value of 0. So all I'm looking for in my table is where I have an x value of 0, and then that's going to be my y-intercept. So right here, okay, that's my y-intercept because that x value is 0. If I was going to go graph that on a coordinate plane, okay, here's my coordinate plane, 0, 3, 1, 2, 3 is right here. That's on the y-axis, so that's my y-intercept, okay? So now I just need to take my slope and my y-intercept and write that function, okay? So y equals negative 2 over 1, x, this is a positive 3, so plus 3, okay? All right, I want you to pause for a second, please pause, and go ahead and write that next equation, okay? Please pause and then try it on your own and come back and do it in a second, okay? Check it in a second. Okay, if you have come back, hopefully you paused and checked it. Here's your next one, okay? So I did the work there, found the slope, found the y-intercept in the table, wrote the function, okay? And that's it. So if you have questions on this spot, please write it down on your notes and then tomorrow you can ask me questions, okay? We have one more here. Like one more. Can't remember if we did this lesson or not. All right, so we're interpreting a linear function, okay? So the table shows the revenue, okay? We just have to graph this, 0, 2, okay? If I'm looking at this advertising versus revenue, advertising is gonna be my X, revenue is gonna be my Y, okay? And then I'm going to graph those. I see that my X's are increasing by 2's every time, so I could have that happen here along my X-axis, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Okay, my Y's are kind of increasing at a different rate, but I would probably just go ahead and also increase those by 2's. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, something like that. And then we graph it. Okay, so the first one's 0, 2. Oops, right here, 0, 2, ignore that first one. 2, 6, 4, 10, 6, 14, and 8, 18. It says to write and graph a linear function that relates R to A, or the revenue to the advertising. Okay, and if I'm going too fast, you can obviously pause and take your time, okay? So I need to figure out what is the slope, what is the y-intercept, and kind of go on from there. So I've got my graph here, I plotted those points. I can find the slope between the 2 points by doing rise over run. Please pay attention to what it's counting by. Here I'm going from 2 to 6, that's a rise of 4, okay, and then my run is 2 over 2, so that's the slope, 4 over 2, but that simplifies to 2 over 1. And the y-intercept is where my line crosses the y-axis. Well, if I look at this line, okay, it's crossing the y-axis right here at 2, so my y-intercept is 2. And all I need to do is write the equation. Y equals 2 over 1x plus 2. Okay, we could use that to make predictions about this company and the revenue that they're going to be making versus what they're spending on their advertising, okay? But we can do that at a later point, okay? If you have questions, again, ask, okay? And we'll discuss it tomorrow. Okay, we're going to skip this last question, and I'm just going to go ahead and let you move on to the next section. So you can do the 7.3 puzzle time, okay? What would you get if you crossed a vampire with a snowman? I am not giving you the boxes down here because I don't want you to cheat and just fill it in and then go backwards. What I want you to do is get out a blank sheet of paper and kind of write your work down, show your work, especially for these questions right here where you are going to need that y2, okay, to find the slope, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I have to see the work. Okay, show your work or you're not getting credit. If you've got questions, email me, let me know, and that's it. All right.